there. You are listening to the Girl Talk Podcast. My name is Carol.
Hey, I'm Trisha.
And I'm Kelly.
Lift them up, lay them down. That's what we're talking about today. How to help others who are hurting. My pastor preached a sermon years ago about the men who grabbed the corners of the mat and got that friend to Jesus. They didn't let anything stand in their way. They dug a hole in the roof, lowered him down. And it was a great example to me and a great word picture that stuck to me till this day, that you and I have to know when to lift people up, when to take up our corner of the mat, and when to lay people down and where to lay them down. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes caring for people who are hurting can feel like a heavy weight. Sure. I know because I've been on the mat and y'all have had to carry me several times, and I know I'm heavy, right?
Well, and you've also held the corners of other people's mats and carried them.
Well, and here's the thing. I think that as we dive into this topic today, we have to set a couple of rules. And hear us, we're not counselors. Can we just say that
Amen.
right up front? We're not counselors.
Amen.
We love you with all our hearts, but if you need help, go get help, right? Go see a
Please.
Christian counselor. Go get some godly biblical counsel.
They're great.
And when my life fell apart, I think I mistakenly thought that somebody was going to say something to make me feel better. And I walked around looking for that person. You know, I don't know if they were going to glow in the dark or, what the case was going to be. But I was like, are you the person that's going to tell me something that's going to ease my pain today or make me feel better? Are you that person?
Help me?
Yeah, can you help me? Walking around and man, that is a recipe for codependency. Like depending on somebody for all the wrong reasons and expecting them to be your savior. There's only one person who can be your savior.
Truth.
And so we as believers, as a community of women, have to come alongside each other, but you have to know when is the time to pick up the edge of the mat and to help carry somebody. And you got to know when to lay them down too, because I think there comes a point in time where you have to get them to Jesus, but you can't make them get the help that they need. I heard, we were talking about Lisa Turkhurst, I heard her say in her Forgiveness Bible study that you can't work on somebody harder than they're working on themselves.
That's true.
They got to work on themselves too. So let's talk a little bit about that and a little bit about how relationally we can be there for one another and provide that support, but also accountability to one another to know when to kind of lay them down and let Jesus do his work. Because I think sometimes by carrying them too long, we get in Jesus' way.
Yeah. Well, so I know you guys have gone through some pretty significant hurt. Both of you have been hurting people. And I have been a hurting person too, but I would love to hear from you guys. What was the best thing somebody did for you? The real practical thing that somebody did for you when you were hurting that made all the difference?
There were two things. I think one was permission, because I'm typically, when I hurt, I tend to get funnier. That's a weird way that my mind works. Like I switch into overdrive, and for somebody to give me permission to actually, because people get completely freaked out when I cry. Like they don't like that. Most people don't. And so I think one was permission, but the other one was letting me feel the emotions without trying to paint over it and make me get better too soon. Does that make sense?
Good. Yes.
So and saying to me, "Hey, Carol, you're incredibly funny, but that's not what this is about." Like calling me on the carpet. And I've had enough Christian counseling for us all. I could spread it around like glitter, and just sprinkle everybody because I've been through a lot. But I will say that was one of the biggest things. I needed somebody to look me in the eye and not laugh at the joke and say, there's something much deeper going on here. So that was for me, permission and
I love that idea too of permission.
Yeah.
Just permission to hurt.
Yeah.
Because so often we want to fix it for somebody, and you can't fix somebody else's hurt.
And see, like
You want to say the right thing.
Yes.
Yeah, and my humor like makes people so. I made a comment at a wedding shower recently. I won't tell you what I said because it's not inappropriate, but I made a comment about my complete situation, and it was like the woman who was standing there was like, ha, ha, ha. Like she didn't know what to say, and it was like, oh, I can tell it's incredibly painful, but I know that you said that to be funny, so what do I do? So it's that kind of humor that still digs at myself, but tries to entertain everybody. And a lot of times I just need somebody to look me in the eye and go, just stop.
Right.
Just
It's okay.
stop. Yeah.
It's okay.
It's all right.
What about you, Trisha?
Well, immediately I started thinking about when Mom died and the moments afterwards, because I would say that is for sure the most intense pain that I've ever gone through, and how people rallied around me, and some of the things that were great, and some of the things that I knew people were trying to help, but it wasn't helpful.
And you wanted to karate chop them in the throat.
Well, I don't know.
I wanted to karate chop them in the throat for you.
For me. I do think I shared with some friends about some of those experiences, because people do want to help. They want to help, and you know that their heart is in the right place, and then they say something that just feels so it feels like you just are completely missing the point of where I am. And I think that's part of what you're talking about, the permission to feel badly. And when people try to draw you out of it by saying something like, well, aren't you happy your mom is in heaven? For example. Yes, I am happy my mom is in heaven. But wouldn't you rather have your mom here with you? Yes, I would rather have my mom here with you.
Right.
And that the whole, like, when you say, oh, she's rejoicing right now, and things like that too soon, it can feel like you have no idea what I'm feeling, or I'm not allowed to feel. So that's why I think your permission is such an important thing. If you give someone the permission to feel, and then I have found that when I am feeling better, I will initiate that discussion. I'm so glad my mom is in heaven right now. I miss her, but let the person who's hurting initiate that thought process. I think that's important, because people really want to help, or they'll quote a Bible verse, and it's wonderful. But if you're still in that serious grief place, it doesn't help so much as it hurts.
It's the equivalent of showing up at a car wreck and saying, "Are you glad you aren't dead?"
Right.
Like, you know,
you broke your arm, you broke your leg.
Right.
But
you would never do that, right?
Yeah.
So I think in what you said, you need to prayerfully respond.
Right.
And if that means not saying anything at all, then you say nothing at all. Because I think one of the things that I am bad to do when a friend is hurting is to try to come up with a solution. I want to fix it. I want to, tell you.
I disagree with that.
Okay.
I think that you are one of the best listeners that I've ever met.
Really?
One of the things that
I'm
you
terrible
did.
at that.
So
You're an
2
amazing
years
listener.
ago, I went through some stuff with my family.
Yeah.
And it was hard. It was very, very painful. And what you did for me is listen. You let me talk. You gave me permission to share my story, permission to share the hard things, permission to hurt, and you just listened. And I think that's one of the best gifts that we can ever give somebody is to say, hey, I'm with you. I'm here. I'm present. I know that you're hurting, and I'm just going to listen. I'm just going to let you talk about what's on your mind without trying to fix whatever it is that's going on.
And even to the point of saying, I don't have the right words. And you are a fantastic listener. And that worked because she let you lead the way.
Right.
So much of the time, if we're trying to help someone, we try to lead the way toward healing and helping and feeling better. But let the hurting person, let the grieving person lead the way, initiate kind of where they are and what they need. And if you listen, they'll tell you. I'm assuming that's kind of...
Sure.
And often I think the open door to that is by saying, I really wish I had the right words. I really wish I had perfect words to help you right now, but I don't. But I'm here. And then that opens the door for that grieving person to lead the way. And I think that's a big piece that unless you've gone through something that's really heartbreaking and tragic, you don't know, because you can't know. You can't know until you go through something like that. You also asked what was something else that really helped me, and it's like, you want to help somebody, you maybe reach out to them and you say, hey, how can I help you? What can I do to help you? And then the person who's going through grief is in such a tailspin emotionally and cognitively, they can't think of what they can ask you for. It's like putting responsibility on them. But if instead you say, I'm going to bring you dinner tomorrow night, or I'm coming over, grabbing some laundry, and I'm going to run a couple of loads for you. Just put it at the door. Don't ask them, because that's already
decision
a hardship.
Fatigue like
Decision
that.
fatigue.
Yeah.
Yes, just tell them something very practically you can do. I'm going to take, your kiddo to gym class or whatever it is. And if you tell them that, most likely they'll be like, Thank you. I had friends mow our yard.
Yeah, yeah.
I had friends bring groceries. I had friends bring reading materials. And one of the best things people did for me was to point me to a biblical study on grief, which is Grief Share, which we've talked about.
Yeah.
Right.
That pointed me in the right direction.
You know, speaking of things, resources, one of the things that I read, a story that I read or a book that I read when I was going through that painful situation a couple of years ago was Lisa TerKeurst's book, It's Not Supposed to Be This Way, which is hands down my favorite of all of hers. And she has this great quote in there that I just want to read you. It says, "Remember that your life is a love story. And we will never appreciate or even desire the hope of our true love," capitalized true love, aka Jesus, "if lesser loves don't disappoint us. The piercing angst of disappointment and everything on this side of eternity creates a discontent with this world and pushes us to long for God Himself. For a place where we will finally walk in the garden with Him, where we will finally have peace and security and eyes that no longer leak tears and hearts that are no longer broken." And I think that's so important for us to remember, that it is Jesus that is the only one who can solve all these things. He is the only one who can dry our tears. He is the only one that can help us with a broken heart. It's only Him. It can't be, we can't be that for somebody else, and nobody else can be that for us except for Jesus.
So true.
And you got to know when to lift him up and lay him down.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I want to go back to something that you said, because you're talking about listening. And I think that I heard this quote. I don't even know who said it, but it's so true. They said, "Listen to understand, not to respond." Listen to understand, not to respond.
So
and
good.
that has totally changed things for me, because
Groundbreaking.
well, in every conversation you have, whether the person's hurting or not, we're always, especially, I mean, you want to talk politics, people don't listen to understand anymore. They listen to respond.
Right.
Like, and you can see it on social media. You're like, that was like lighting a match and throwing it on a can of gasoline, you know? And there's a lost art of listening to understand, but everybody's quick to give their response. And I think that's when I get in trouble. When I am listening to respond, I have to stop myself and go, just listen.
Yeah.
Just let them talk.
Because we make it about ourselves instead of about them.
I know, right?
Yeah. I had a girlfriend once. Well, I lost a girlfriend a couple of years ago. In fact, today's her birthday. Today she would have been 41. But there's this, her name was Kirsten. It's just a lovely soul. But the place I was working at the time, I worked for a dear friend who came to me a couple weeks after Kirsten passed away. And she said, "I don't like the person you are. I don't like the person you've been over the last couple of weeks. You're not the bubbly personality you used to be. I think you need to change." And
Are you serious?
It was so hurtful to realize that that she wasn't listening. You know, she wasn't really wanting to care about my broken heart and what was going on in my life. That it was more about
Her expectation of you.
her expectation.
What you
of
were
me.
giving her.
Yeah.
Right.
What?
Yeah.
Yes. And you know, in her defense, she was trying to fix me.
Right.
You know, she's trying to fix me back to the bubbly person I was.
Right.
As opposed to just stopping to hear and listen to my broken heart. And that's so important for
Yeah.
us to do, is to stop and listen.
I think, I may be totally off on this, but I think, you know, I have a big birthday coming up this year.
Oh.
Yeah, and I think with that particular age, you kind of give yourself permission to, like, in the last year or so, I will honestly say that I've given myself permission to, like, not be the class clown all the time. And, like, that has been, oh my word, such a great, I mean, I am definitely a class clown.
Yes.
I'm a rascal, I will
Yes,
tell
you
you,
are.
in every sense of the word. But there are days where I just need to sit and look out a window somewhere.
Yeah.
There are days I'm grumpy. There are days I, just don't feel like being funny. There are days that I cry, and all of that makes up who I am. I'm not one dimensional, right? Like your friend saw you as that one dimensional kind of person where you could only be one thing. And I think that's important to remember. Anytime you go through anything painful, there are going to be people in your life who expect you to be what you were before that painful experience. And they want to hurry up your process. And one of the things that we learned in Grief Share is everybody's timeline is different,
Right.
I sat down in a Grief Share classroom and everybody in there's grief was much newer than mine. And I was like, what am I even doing here? You know, and like in session 2 or 3, they say everybody's got their own timeline. Just because, you know, you may be 10 years out and still hurting from a particular, it's because part of that's not healed yet. And you need to go and spend some time, some hard work on that particular instance. So what we try to do is get people over things too fast. When they tend to be fractures in their life, they're never going to be the same. Even if we want them to be, they will be different. Doesn't mean they won't be better.
Circumstances.
Right.
Yes.
Maybe they will
Deeper.
be better.
Yeah,
Yes.
Deeper.
I will say most of the time they're better.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you think about it. Do you want to hang out with people who've never been through anything?
Right, no.
I don't. I'm like, it must be nice to be you, but that ain't going to work for long.
Well, and in those hard times is when our relationship with God is strengthened.
Yes, true.
And isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
Yes, it is later. It's not right then.
Yeah, that's
like,
right.
yeah.
You can look back and see the good
That's
in
right.
it, but that's hard in the
This
moment. But
is
it's
messy
hard.
right here. This is so messy.
But you're making me think about something that I've never really thought about. It's about if the idea is you want to help someone who's hurting. It's making me think, based on this conversation, to take a step back and look at my motive. Why am I doing this? Am I doing this so I feel better? Am I doing this so this person will continue to give me the things that they've given me in our relationship before? Or am I really doing this to encourage them, love them, and be and point them to Jesus?
Right.
That motive is a big
Here you
piece
go,
of it.
Jim. We're dropping the mic again.
I don't think I did, but
Yes,
you made
you
me
did.
think about it based
Yeah.
on this conversation. I never thought about it like that.
What is my motive
Right.
in this relationship? Do I really want to help them? Are they a missions project? 'Cause I've been a missions project for lots of people.
Sure.
Through the years I have. Like there are some friends of mine who've been long time friends of mine, and one of my mentors, in fact, and she refers to it as the wayward years. She was like, that was during the wayward years. You know, there was
I
a
love
period
it.
of time where I just kind of walked away from everything and everything I knew, but they loved me through it, you know? And I think that we all have those times when we need people to come alongside us and say, you're not what I expected right now, and that's okay. Am I better on the other side of that because of the wayward years? Absolutely I am.
Yeah.
I have a stronger faith than I did before. But you're right. You have to really go through those motives and say, am I looking to earn my missionary badge because I have rescued this person from the jaws of hell? You know, those kinds of things. Or am I really wanting to love them through and show them Jesus, not for them to give me, you know, another notch in my belt because... You know, and we're terrible saviors.
That is the truth.
Not what we were ever called to be.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm a terrible, I like, you wouldn't, if you thought, well, I'll put this salvation plan together. Let me sign Carol Davis up for you. You would not do that, right?
But you're a great listener.
But
And a
when
great friend.
Well, y'all are
Great
sweet.
friend.
But those are roles that you were never meant to play. And
No.
so you really do have to dig down deep and pull that string again and see what's my motive in this and helping others
I love that.
go through that.
Yep. Best
So-
takeaway right there. Trisha's
good.
words.
Best takeaway.
Check our motives.
If I had my little bell here, I would ring it twice.
Ding,
Ding,
ding.
ding. There you go. So Trisha gets the prize for today. we love you being a part of the Girl Talk podcast. And if you got thoughts about this, we would love to hear from you. Hey, don't forget, go like the Girl Talk podcast page. It is a public page, so you can share all our content now. So it's all there for you. Just search for Girl Talk Podcast on Facebook. We would love to see you there. We would also love for you to subscribe to this podcast. If you subscribe, then whenever there's a new podcast that's released, you'll automatically get a notification that tells you, hey, there's a new podcast. So you won't have to actually, you know, ask your friend or go discover it on your own. You'll get a reminder. And if you're anything like me, reminders are good.
They're helpful.
I know it. I have a million a day. Here's your reminder that we love you.
Yes.
We appreciate you being part of this family. And we will see you next time we gather around these microphones for the Girl Talk podcast.